study session meeting. This meeting is being held via Zoom conference call today due to the COVID-19 crisis. Members of the public may participate by following the instructions listed on the agenda. You may also view and listen to the meeting on live stream cable TV, Granicus, and YouTube. Following roll call during summary of hearing procedure, we will review how the public may provide comments during today's session. We're going to do roll call now. Commissioner Bonilla is absent. Commissioner Casey is here. Commissioner Caballero. Commissioner Cantrell. Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Lardnois.
Here.
Commissioner Montanes. Commissioner Oliverio. Commissioner Ornelas Wise.
Here.
Commissioner Torrance.
Here.
And Commissioner Young.
Here.
All right. Procedure for this hearing is as follows. City staff will call out names of the public who identify they want to speak. Oh, I see we have Commissioner Garcia. You may identify yourself by the raised hand feature on Zoom. Click *9 on your phone, or you may call 408-535-3505 or email planning support staff at sanjoseca.gov and identify your name, phone number, and what items you would like to speak on. As your name is called, city staff will unmute you to speak. After we confirm your audio is working, your allotted time will begin. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. Speakers using a translator will have 4 minutes. Planning commissioners may ask questions of the speakers. Response to the planning commissioner's questions will not reduce the speaker's time allowance. Staff will unmute the speaker to respond to the commissioner. The public hearing will then be closed and the planning commission will take action on the item. The planning commission may request staff to respond to the public testimony, ask staff questions, and discuss them. Staff, do we have any speakers for public comment for items not on the planning commission study session agenda?
Not seeing any raised hands, and we did not get any requests.
Okay, so are we handing it over to Victor Farley at this point?
Yes, we can continue to the next item.
Victor, the mic is yours.
Good evening, Vice Chair and members of the Planning Commission. I'm delighted to be able to join you from the Office of Economic Development here this evening and to give you a presentation on small business displacement. The Office of Economic Development has a broad mission to drive the city's prosperity, and tackling business displacement goes to the heart of our work. Next slide, please.
Vic, just real quick,
yes.
If we have questions, should we raise a hand or should we wait until the end of the presentation?
It would be easier to wait till the end of the presentation if that's okay with the commission.
Works for me.
Okay. Thank you. So this study session is designed to give you a clear understanding of what we mean by business displacement, how small businesses in local neighborhoods respond to the challenge, how the city is responding through the work of the displacement pilot that I and my colleagues have overseen, and finally, how COVID is reshaping the city's approach to support for small businesses and neighborhood economies in general. I'll also be showing you some of our latest analysis of federal stimulus loans and grant programs, in effect attempting to connect the dots between land use, small business, and the city's neighborhood economies. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so why are small businesses so important? 2 reasons to highlight for you. San Jose needs jobs. Our workforce is bigger than the total number of jobs in the city. Small businesses in San Jose employ more than 200,000 people, many of whom live locally and are a critical component of the workforce. And secondly, with 40% of the city's residents not being born in the United States, Entrepreneurship and establishing successful businesses is such an important opportunity to create long-term wealth for the individual, their family, the neighborhood, and the city. Next page, please. Next slide, please. So how many small businesses are there in San Jose, and how do we define them? Traditionally, a small business is any business that is employing up to 35 staff. But it's important to break that down for you in the table that you see in front of you. And on the slide, you can see that the number of businesses there, just over 62,000 in total. There is a significant number of sole proprietors, self-employed, and micro businesses. And when you combine those two numbers there, the 38,000 and the 19,000 that you see in that second column, and there's a percentage of the total in the third column, that's close to 93% of all businesses active in the city registered on our business tax license data. Knowing the average age of a business is very important to the city. It's an indicator, along with the number and type of businesses, that tells us how resilient those businesses are in general and informs our understanding of neighborhood economics. Is the area stable, growing, or in decline? And as a headline from that table above, it informs us why micro businesses with a lower average age, 10.8 years, need more targeted support. Next slide, please. So, defining small business displacement. Next slide, please. What do we mean by small business displacement? I shall cover that in detail for you. I'll give you an overview of the California commercial property market and how it functions, which is critical to this presentation. And how do we identify the key triggers that form displacement risk for the business community? Next slide, please. So, defining business displacement. There are essentially three types of business displacement that we witness here in San Jose. Firstly, direct displacement, the redevelopment of a specific site or sites. This is visible to us. It is what you see as a planning commission. But there are also two other forms of displacement that are indirect. Commercial rent increases not matched by an equivalent rise in income or cost reduction that ultimately either forces the business to relocate or close. As we see in the economic recession, those low profit fixed cost businesses that do not use or cannot use a bank or secure a loan are more exposed to the risk of failure. So indirect displacement, although largely invisible to us, has an important impact on the future of small businesses in particular. And finally, long-term asset rises. As the demand for land increases over time and the availability of sites decline, there is long-term market appreciation. Land in value rises. We also witness the issue of land banking. In an economic cycle, as large organizations hold large sites and property, it further increases the financial value of existing land that's for sale. There is a scarcity. And occasionally sites may appear empty, but in fact, there are leases in operation. And we saw this recently with the Orchard Supply hardware stores, where although to anyone passing that site would look closed, in fact, the property owner is still gaining through a lease that operates and rent is being paid. All of this can be invisible to the city. So indirect displacement through rent increases or long-term asset appreciation have to be understood by the city alongside direct displacement. Thank you. Next slide, please. So if we understand the definitions of how this takes place, what are the triggers here? Understanding California's commercial property market is very important. And the headline is that California has a free market for commercial property with minimal restrictions on negotiation, agreement, and limited regulatory oversight between the landowner and the tenant. There is no rent control, and landmark court cases have found in favor of the land property owner. If tax dollars are part of the project funding, there is a fixed statewide maximum level of compensation, typically paid by the landowner to the developer. Only in an emergency, such as the COVID pandemic, can the governor enable local jurisdictions to approve ordinances to protect the commercial property market. And currently, Santa Clara County has a COVID pandemic commercial rent eviction moratorium in place. So these are the conditions through which the market functions, and with very little restrictions, both for buyers and sellers, and sustains a very active property market here in the city of San Jose. Next slide, please. So what are the primary triggers that can lead to the displacement of a business? There are three broad categories here. Firstly, the existing sites and the site conditions. And what we observe is that displacement is most likely where the site is large, relatively underused, has ease of access by road, vacant or largely vacant, and if the tenants are in occupation, have simple or expired leases. Next slide, please. Secondly, site ownership. If a site has not been sold for many years and is privately owned, it is more likely to be subject to sale pressure centered on realizing the maximum dollar value and gain. And thirdly, existing business tenants can play a critical role in determining when and how the site may ultimately be sold and the conditions of sale. Site redevelopment is more likely to follow if there are fewer businesses occupying an underutilized site. Finally, in San Jose, the Office of Economic Development recognizes the active role of commercial property brokers who inform both buyer and seller interests, which in general leads to a highly competitive market for land and property throughout the economic cycle. This informs the scale, pace, and nature of physical land and property development here in the city. Thank you. Next slide, please. So how do businesses and neighborhoods protect themselves from negative economic displacement? Next slide, please. Essentially, how do we design and define the solutions? First and foremost, maintaining a diverse supply of leasable property. It's why zoning is important to protect the city's economy. Secondly, ensuring a broad and diverse range and mix of industries. We have to attract investment and we need to retain businesses. And thirdly, local neighborhood economies rely on household income that rises over time. This is a critical measure of local success if the community and the people living within that community enjoy rising living standards and rising income. These are the three core ways in which we protect business by virtue of the supply of land, the mix of business type, and rising consumption over time. Next slide, please. So how do the combined interests of business community and the city respond to the risk of displacement? The truth is there is no guaranteed solution. It is a mix or combination of how we adapt to the following. Does an area have a defined sense of place? Do businesses have a representative voice or many voices? Do businesses routinely access professional advice and services? Do property owners and business tenants have shared interests? And most importantly, from the perspective of the business owner, can they and do they own the property that they occupy as a business, thereby fulfilling a dual role of being the business owner and the property owner? In such way, they have control over their lives and their decision making. Next slide, please. So what is the city's business displacement pilot and what lessons are being learned? Next slide, please. San Jose approved the pilot following a council study session on October 1st, 2019. It's centered in the Alum Rock area, and the pilot created a signpost and a catalyst function within the Office of Economic Development. That's essentially me and my colleagues, and I'll now go on to explain what that is and what we've done to date. Thank you. Next slide, please. First of all, what are the big displacement pressures in Alum Rock? Essentially, there have been three. One is a long-standing set of negotiations on proposed urban villages. That's well known. And in the Five Wounds area, for instance, of Alum Rock, we have a very active group of residents, businesses, and property owners engaged successfully in the public process. Since late 2019, residential development and specifically affordable housing projects have come to the fore and have been very significant in the discussions over the future of Alum Rock and decisions that have come forward through you as the Planning Commission and on to Council. And last but not least, looking forward, we expect by 2023, the new BART Phase 2 to begin construction. This is a 10-year, $4 billion plus project. It's important to state that the engineering is a tunnel design. It's not open site construction. So mitigation will be there through both design, but there will be impact during and after construction. So an important question for VTA acting on behalf of BART is to establish a business mitigation program to safeguard the interests of businesses along the route over a period of up to 10 years. And this is a very important question that we will no doubt return to in the next months to come. Thank you. Let's move on to the next slide. So what is the signpost function? Essentially, it's threefold. It's to be a point of contact and source of information to businesses. And in addition, our office has 2 full-time staff permanently based in the planning department to exclusively support small businesses on all permitting issues. They are known as the Small Business Ally, and the service they provide is fundamental to ensuring that small businesses obtain permits in a timely way, knowing what they need to provide. And a lot of the emphasis behind the pilot has been to direct people to that service. Secondly, we ensure that where businesses need to be able to take free professional advice, we're able to direct them to one of the organizations here in the city of San Jose that offers these services. And finally, we engage with local business organizations and maintain lines of communications with people who speak on behalf of business. Now, moving on to the next slide, please. Now, moving on to the role of Catalyst, here are the key headlines. What we do is we actively collaborate to capacity build local business groups and associations, in particular in Alum Rock, the Latino Business Foundation and the Alum Rock Business Association. We then go and source advice, and in this case, free legal advice from organizations such as Start Small, Think Big, and we've introduced businesses to the Santa Clara University Law Clinic to discuss matters as wide-ranging as leasing, negotiation, or termination, or any of the aspects of concern that a business owner may have. And finally, significantly, in terms of the future of businesses, we've established links with the retail banks, the community development financial institutions, and credit unions. Next slide, please. The Catalyst role has also been there to develop new projects. And 2 I wish to highlight to the Planning Commission. 1 is the establishment of a property business improvement district. This is designed in partnership with the Alum Rock Business Association and property owners to raise tax dollars for local control. This is now under active consideration and is an important long-term view on sustaining the Alum Rock economy. Secondly, we have a key project with the Latino Business Foundation that includes co-designing a virtual business incubator that is now operational for small businesses. And we anticipate opening in late 2021 and early 2022 in partnership with Somos Mayfair and the Excite Credit Union, a new neighborhood small business center at Quetzal Gardens on Alum Rock Avenue. And the combination of bringing forward a business improvement district allied to the creation of a business center, focused in Alum Rock, is a way of building a long-term perspective that enables small businesses to access services, to have shared interests with property owners, and to develop a collective vision of success going forward. Next slide, please. What have we observed today in terms of development risk in Alum Rock? Well, this is where my assessment of responding to business owners on planning and development matters is as follows. Business owners are generally unfamiliar with the formal planning process. They rarely engage, and they certainly, in many cases, cannot afford to pay for professional advisors. And they do rely on word of mouth by people they know and local networks. Some small businesses need easy access to free services, and we've had to look carefully at bringing organizations to those businesses locally, and that involves our work with the Latino Business Foundation. Examples also exist of business owners who did not understand their lease, or in fact the lease had expired and hadn't been renewed. And in these circumstances, we've advised the business owner to seek legal advice or to communicate directly with the landlord or the property manager acting on behalf of the owner to be able to negotiate a solution. But of these issues, the most fundamental to managing how business owners have to understand what's facing them is one of timing. Timing is critical. The more lead-in time that a business owner has to make decisions, then that increases the prospect of successful survival and relocation. Being required to make a decision in 14 days or 28 days does not lead to the best outcome. Many business owners need time to understand their circumstances and to find a solution. And the question of timing becomes critical in how we move forward and we build our relationship with small businesses using the organizations that we have locally. Next slide, please. One of our other projects with the Latino Business Foundation was to conduct a recent equity-driven small business survey. Over 200 businesses completed that survey, 90% of whom were business owners of color. And the core issues, you can see that on the slide, were highlighted. That there is a real language and cultural competency that's required by all organizations, including the city, in relation to how we communicate and what we offer and how we resolve issues. Access to free services needs to be delivered by a trusted intermediary and an organization independent of the business and in many cases independent of the city. If the business is closed, the owner is looking to start a new business in the same industry. People aren't seeking to make radical changes. There's also a desire to locate or relocate within the neighborhood. People are looking to stay. And lastly, and importantly, business owners are looking for programs that enhance the physical appearance of site-specific commercial property. Thank you. Next slide, please. So let's move on and look at how COVID has reshaped the impact on small business citywide and what the city is planning as we move forward. So in terms of how the impact of COVID influenced 2020, we know from the work that we've done and the surveys that we have and the data we use that 40% of businesses were either closed or experienced very restricted conditions during that year. It was uneven in impact. It was concentrated in specific local neighborhoods and small non-tech private businesses. We observed a $35 million drop in the city's sales tax, from which 75% of this decline was concentrated in 4 areas: restaurants, non-food retail, car sales, and gas sales. We also know that 27,000 businesses are estimated to lease space in San Jose and are protected by a commercial rent eviction moratorium. Small landlords are under severe pressure. That is the context within which COVID impacted small businesses and how we had to consider the survival of small businesses going forward. So how did we do that? Next slide, please. So from March 2020, my role and that of my colleagues within the Office of Economic Development shifted to address the impact of COVID. The number one business issue was access to money and cash flow support to enable businesses to survive. If you'd like to know more about this, the city published on July 30th an information memo that analysed all aspects of the form of loans and grants that were distributed to businesses in San Jose. So far, over 45,000 separate business loans and grants were secured from federal and state loan and grant programs in San Jose alone, with an estimated value of $2.6 billion. Not every business survived the past 18 months, and recovery is painful. But these loans and grants were fundamental to shaping the ability of business to survive and the economy of the city of San Jose to begin to recover. So let's look in more detail at Alum Rock. Next slide, please. Thank you. How the role of Catalyst and the Office of Economic Development evolved during COVID, as I say, was to focus on grants. And in Alum Rock, zip code 95116, we targeted 5 key programs. You can see them on the slide, and here are the numbers. So from figures released by the federal agency, the Small Business Administration, there were just over 1,500 individual loans and grants with a total value of just under $57 million. The most significant program is there in the middle there, the Paycheck Protection Program, commonly known as PPP, which accounted for some 82% of all monies. Next slide, please. So let's see how the money was broken down by the businesses based on the employee size that I showed you at the outset of the presentation. We looked at the list of businesses on our tax license with the federal data sets, and our point of analysis was to identify the take-up rate. So you can see here on the slide in front of you, on the left-hand column, the business size, the distribution of dollar amount by each business type, the loan count, how many loans were identified, and then the average loan. And it's very significant. I'd like to draw your attention to the 2 to 9 row. These are our micro businesses that I was referring to you earlier that had a lower life average expectancy than all other business types. And you can see there that the average loan in that 4th column was $38,000 compared to the next business size up of $136,000. When you look at the last 2 columns, you get the analytical information, the take up. So we know citywide on that 2 to 9 column that 34% of all businesses employing 2 to 9 staff were able to obtain a PPP loan in San Jose. But in 95116, it was only 28%. That's the shortfall. So despite the conclusion I draw from this is that despite the fruits of our collective efforts to attract the maximum amount of federal loans and grants into 95116, we can see that we have to do better going forward, particularly in the micro business area, as this influences our approach to policy as we move from survival to recovery. Next slide, please. So the transition from survival to recovery is a recognition of the need to address both small business within the local neighborhood and what we have done is to apply to the Federal Economic Development Agency and been successful in creating a new program that fulfills these requirements. And this will include the Alum Rock area. Next slide, please. So here is the map. And this map informs you of the area that we will be targeting our small business recovery and resiliency efforts. Now, small business was impacted across the city. So this is not...
Vic, my apologies. I don't know that your slides are matching up with what you're saying.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, let me just check.
I think we're one behind.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide, please. I apologize, Vice Chair.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, let me return. So this is the map that informs you of how we are creating a spatial zone to connect small business recovery with the question of displacement and the identification of those neighborhoods who were most impacted by COVID. And this is the map that will show how we're going to target our recovery and resiliency efforts to join this together. Now, small businesses need to recover across the city. So it's not an exclusive approach, but it's one in which we are targeting in order to be able to ensure that small businesses and those neighborhood economies do recover. Next slide, please. So the next steps are to implement this Economic Development Agency program, to build the more resilient neighborhood, and in parallel, review the displacement pilot that I've just presented to you, understand the lessons that we're learning, and then begin to look to design a city-wide approach. And finally, we want to collaborate with our key business partners to maximize the opportunities for business owners to invest in assets, including property ownership, thereby building that more long-term approach to asset and wealth generation. And it's the combination, the interaction of these three steps that derives, I think, the greatest value for small business and the city as we move forward. I'd like to conclude, Chair and Commissioners, by identifying for you what I believe long-term success can look like. I do so by highlighting the following points: that retaining a sufficient local supply of commercial land and property is fundamental. Land use is critical to the outcome of this discussion over the immediate and the long term. Businesses increasingly should look to acquire assets and property, as I've suggested, and improving the number of tenant and owners is a very important part of that approach. Small businesses will be encouraged and supported by the city to self-organize and also identify clearly within their community. Entrepreneurship should be encouraged with the aim of creating intergenerational wealth. It's a fundamental principle of equity-driven economics. Both citywide targeted investment and localized organic innovation will create new programs as we move forward. And last but not least, rising household income strengthens neighborhoods. Last slide. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation to you. I'd be delighted to receive comments and questions.
Thank you, Vic. Any of the commissioners have questions for Vic? Commissioner Lardnois?
Yeah, I got a lot of questions, but I'll just start with one so we give people go around. So, I really think that's important that this presentation has a focus on small businesses owning their sites. And I'm curious, does the city know or have a breakdown of how many small businesses own their location versus have long-term leases or short-term leases? Is that information that the city has good?
Okay, so in terms of the lease information, no. That's essentially private information between the landlord, the property management company, and the tenant. The question of ownership is interesting because increasingly we're encouraging the owner of a business when they complete their annual business tax license application to answer that question for us. Okay. And so some businesses are now actively answering yes or no, and we're building a picture. And so we do have a record of the 62,000 businesses that are registered with us. But my disappointment in answering your question is a minority have answered yes or no. So it's a partial answer to your question.
As in, like, that's not a required question for them to answer when they fill out the paperwork?
Correct.
Gotcha. And then also I'm curious, does that distinguish between, some businesses operate in dedicated facilities, and as mentioned in the presentation though, many small businesses are sole proprietorships or self-employed people who might operate out of their home. Are you able to distinguish that when it comes to ownership statistics?
Yes, and that's a key feature of our kind of move forward on data. I didn't want to get into the data side, but essentially a sort of part of the work of the office has been to kind of really upgrade our use of data and analytics to include that question. And that's why we really break down more of the business types into the sole proprietor and who is working their business from home, who has a business location, where are they concentrated, and we now kind of map that. and we slice and dice the maps according to the particular locations that we're interested in. So I've done that recently for the the Google Downtown West area that was part of the important decision making that came before Planning Commission. I've done it for the VTA BART area, so we get an analysis that we can track over time. And it's the tracking over time, Commissioner, that I think is very interesting to us, because that informs us about need and how we prioritize areas.
Gotcha. I would love if we could get an update on this some point in the future.
Sure.
Commissioner Torrance?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Vic. So my question is, as far as resources for small business, you did not mention the Silicon Valley Small Business Development Center. Is that a resource that you tell people about?
Yes, it is. And they're probably the most significant organization that we've worked with in the past 18 months with COVID. And they form a kind of partnership that we call Business Owner Space. The acronym is BOSS, B-O-S, but it's Business Owner Space. And within that partnership, the SBDC for Silicon Valley, along with about 28 other organizations that I work with, we bring in according to the issue and the type. And so the SBDC has been really one of the leading players in offering free business advice, and we direct them to that. And so when I would be hosting a webinar, for instance, on issues of finance, and we would be having somewhere between 200 and 400 business owners attending the webinar, the SBDC would be on my panel with me, because we would be offering one-to-one guided advice, and they would then be registering them as a client for follow-up. And we've kind of learned, the truth is, Commissioner, we've kind of learned under pressure to really act more promptly and to act more swiftly in the way in which we make referrals. And so that relationship has kind of grown, and you kind of learn, in truth, you learn as much from your mistakes as from what works. And that's driven the city closer to those business owner space providers.
Okay, thank you. I now know why you look familiar, and that's because I attended kind of those webinars, and I have to attest that it's been very, very helpful as a small business owner, both the grant programs and the working one-on-one with an advisor through the SBDC. So 2 thumbs up from Commissioner Torrance.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Farley. It was a really, really well done presentation, very informative. I had a question on one of your earlier slides, and it had to do with a cap of $31,000 under state law for a taxpayer-funded project. And I didn't quite understand that. Could you explain that just a little bit more, please?
There is a statute in California law that was approved by the State Assembly going back many years. I can't remember the exact year. If there's an attorney with me from the city, they will be able to give you a more detailed answer. But essentially, within that statute, it set financial limits. And that limit is the same limit whether you live in San Jose or Fresno, or irrespective of your location in San Jose. So the frustration, as you could imagine with that, is it doesn't really bear a reflection on the cost of running a business from one location to another. And the actual dollar number hasn't been changed for close to 25 years. So the real value of that money has declined over time. So there is a lot of frustration from within the business community and chambers of commerce on that specific point. The other question that's come up recently, as you probably know, that the debate on affordable housing has generated new laws at a California-wide level. And part of that conversation there is about compensating organizations such as businesses that are impacted. And so there's a second kind of debate here around compensation to do with affordable housing that is becoming more complex according to the types of projects that are being brought forward, the nature of the funding that goes into those projects, and the relationship of the developer to the landowner. And that's kind of a very interesting area at the moment for the housing department and its discussion with developers on projects that they are prepared to support and bring forward. But the sort of the headline position is the one I described to you. It's a fixed limit, and in truth, business owners feel that that is a number that doesn't really address need.
Thank you. Yeah, just a brief follow-up on that. Do you know if there's any effort at the state legislature level to address that at all?
No, is the short answer, but it's a point that the city agreed as part of its lobbying plan for the way in which we interact with government that we want it on the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Pleasure.
I think Vera wanted to chime in on this. I'm sorry, Commissioner Ornelas Wise. I just wanted to see if she wanted to make a point.
Actually, no, what you're discussing is not an area that I'm particularly familiar with.
Okay.
I think Vic covered it just fine. Thank you.
Okay. You have your hand raised. Did you want to make a comment?
No, you know what? It keeps raising and I don't know why. And so I keep trying to lower it and okay.
Right on.
There we go.
Commissioner Ornelas Wise.
Hi, Vic. How are you?
Good evening.
Good. You know, I saw that you had about 27,000 business noted in the PowerPoint that were under the eviction moratorium. Do you know when that eviction moratorium is going to lift for these businesses? And how will it affect these businesses once this business eviction moratorium is lifted?
Great question. And okay, so the headlines here are that the governor of California has issued an order that allows local jurisdictions to continue to operate eviction moratoriums up to September 30th, 2021, the end of this September. Santa Clara County currently have an eviction moratorium in place for the whole of the county, and it's a very good eviction moratorium because it covers all businesses. So therefore, there's no sense of bias or fairness or unfairness, depending on where you're located. So every business is part of that. And they have to meet next week, next Tuesday, to take the current eviction moratorium, which is due to expire on August the 17th through to September the 30th. The governor is expected to make a statement between now and September the 30th. And as you can imagine, local jurisdictions on the whole want the governor to extend that moratorium or to create conditions that allow the business tenant to have a period of time to repay what's owing. Now, helpfully, what Santa Clara County have agreed is the following policy on outstanding rent repayment. That the tenant has up to 6 months following the ending of the moratorium to pay 50% of what's owed. And then they have another 6 months to pay the outstanding balance, which could be a further 50%. So let's just use the example of September the 30th. If for whatever reason the moratorium comes to an end so that in effect October the 1st, the normal market conditions are in force, then any rent due, half of that money would have to be paid by the tenant to the landlord by March the 30th, 2022, and then September the 30th, 2022. Those would be the key dates that we would inform businesses if that were to apply. Now, the county has leeway here. The county can change those dates. So the county can say, actually, we'd like to extend the 6 months to 9 months. But in balancing that argument, it will also want to know what the views of landlords are. And it's recognized in Silicon Valley, and particularly in Santa Clara County, that we do have a large number of very small landlords who may only have 1 or 2 properties for whom this has been a severe cash flow problem if they've not received rent. So there's 2 sides to the argument, but on balance, what you can see from the amount of loans and grants that have come into the city from the federal stimulus money, plus the fact that we estimate if 40% of businesses were closed for part of 2020, that means 60% weren't, then there is a sense within which, although we can't estimate a number, and I would be guessing, and it's wrong to guess, we think on the whole, businesses have the capacity to be able to negotiate a solution, but it won't be without, I think, problems, because the very nature of an individual business varies so much. And what we can see, if you look at, for instance, restaurants as an example, where they're very much affected by the COVID regulations. At the moment, most restaurants in the city are open. They are doing business. They are engaging in both outdoor dining as well as indoor dining. But if COVID restrictions were to come back, for instance, that would have a material impact on the ability of those businesses to trade normally. Thank you.
I have some follow-up on that. Have you all at all tried to reach out to these landlords to try to negotiate and reduce what is due?
I think the answer to that is yes, but do I think we've been effective? I'm not sure, because we do communicate by virtue of email, by webinar, and by documents that are released to both landlord and tenant. Now, landlords are of such differing types, from very large corporate landlords that view their property more as an asset in the balance sheet, whereas small landlords tend to view this as cash flow. I rely on my rent each month to pay for my retirement. And so you've got this complete mix of interests here. And so our position has been when a landlord or a tenant has contacted me and said, what do I do? My answer has been, please negotiate a solution now and avoid litigation. Litigation involves cost and consequences, and generally speaking, normally ends badly for one party or another. So my general position on the question of eviction moratoriums is, however difficult the relationship is around money and the terms of your lease, it is better to try and negotiate now. If you need the city's support, I and my colleagues in the Office of Economic Development will refer you to free independent legal advice through people like Start Small, Think Big. We're also reviewing how we might have to expand that offer in the light of the eviction moratorium ending, because we can see there'll be a greater demand for services. And I think we're probably 6 to 8 weeks from coming up with a contract that will be let on that front. But you can see that if you said to me, what is the main risk to recovery throughout the course of 2021? It's the issue of property. And so therefore, our position is, when we as a city are not allowed to negotiate on behalf of one party over another. So therefore, I feel like my job is the important role of explaining what you can do, but leaving it to the two parties to have to negotiate, in truth, privately, a solution that avoids litigation. Apologies, that was a bit long. I didn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, I like to see whatever you could do in advance to reach out to those 27,000 people.
Yeah.
And but more than anything, you've got such a wealth of resources here in regards to. I would encourage you to reach out to the universities like San Jose State, Evergreen, Stanford. You got all these great, entities here with students to provide additional manpower that are studying, that may be able to do surveying work. So I know when I was a graduate student at San Jose State in urban planning, we did stuff with the redevelopment agency. So I'd highly encourage you to use those students and work with the different resource like schools and the students to give you a little bit more manpower to reach out and be that bridge. Yeah, but good job. I know it's tough times and you're doing the best you can. So thanks.
I appreciate that. I think what I tried to draw out for commissioners tonight is there is a connection between displacement, neighborhood economy, and small business. And you have to look at the three together and understand all of the conditions, and then have good data that analyzes where the need is. And I think that's what we've tried to do over the last 2 years. And you see as a commission, if you like, the sensitivity of the arguments for and against when development comes forward. But fundamentally, land use is very important here in the long term, because we do have a need for jobs and we do need to sustain our economy.
Yeah, so I mean, I hear you loud and clear where we need a little bit more zoning that helps with commercial, because we need it to boost the economic development, especially after COVID.
Yes.
I agree with that. And I do think that maybe even people working from home and providing different services from home, given everything that's happened and a lot of people working from home, maybe there's some more businesses that are allowed under the home occupation. Yeah, I think that could be expanded to help that. Okay, thanks.
Pleasure.
Commissioner Lardon, while you still have your hand up, do you have some follow-up questions?
I do. So one thing that was mentioned earlier in the presentation is that many small businesses are unfamiliar with the city's planning process.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, is that something that would be important knowledge for a lot of small business owners?
Yes, and we've had really difficult questions to consider in relation to language competency, the way in which we present information, the time we give people to familiarize themselves with that information. Business owners, my colleagues may have different perspectives, but my relationship with business owners has been one based on trust. So I hear things they want to tell me that perhaps they don't wish to discuss with anyone else. And I think there is a genuine fear of coming into City Hall. Is this about rules and compliance? Am I going to get fined? What does it mean to talk to you? And so a lot of, I'm sorry if it's the human side to this is very important. And sometimes it's not the city that needs to provide that information. Actually, a local organization, whether it's community or business-based, is better placed. It's more connective, word of mouth, whether it's a piece of paper or something online, allows people to engage. And actually what I've seen in Alum Rock, particularly on the housing projects, is a coalition of interests, not always people having the same point of view, but certainly individuals, community groups, business groups will come to meetings if they're given enough time and notice, and if they do, if in a sense, have the opportunity to understand the question that's being presented. And where business owners are a little cynical is, in a sense, you're just asking me the question because you want to know an answer and then you go away again. What they want is a more meaningful, connective relationship. And that's where, in a sense, if you're an Office of Economic Development and you're a small team, you can't always give that. And you have to work with intermediary organizations. And I think what you'll see in Alum Rock, for instance, which will be an interesting kind of test for us as a city, is how well the Business Improvement District proposal and the Latino Business Foundation emerge and develop over the next 18 months to 2 years, and how that acts in some respects as a bit of kind of a leader in that respect in relation to how neighborhood economies can be considered as we go forward. And I think the last thing about businesses and what they need is a sympathetic ear and an understanding that they're not being judged, and the questions they may ask may be to a professional, not exactly the most important, but fundamentally it's what is in someone's mind. And so a lot of my time pre-COVID, in that 6 months I was the sort of signpost, was often just say, I'm not the expert here, but I know someone, and this is who you should go and talk to. And I felt that just took the pressure off people. And then they would come back and say to me, now you told me this, and actually the Small Business Ally in PBC, if I were a small business owner in the city needing a permit, that's who I would go and see, because I know I'm going to get effectively a free service and an efficient outcome.
Gotcha. Okay. And so that's really helpful, because I think when I saw planning process, I thought you just meant land use, but you're really talking about the entire, everything about how the city regulates business is, you're saying it's really, that's sometimes a gap that has to be bridged.
Yeah, and often the truth is you listen to a business owner and you have to be honest and say, I don't think I can help you. This is a matter for your landowner and property owner. And you've really got to go and have a conversation with them, particularly where businesses have been occupying sites for many, many years. The property may not be up to code. They've got to go and talk to the property owner or the property management company to sort of, put this on the table. And a good example of that is to do with the ADA legislation, for instance, and disability and the requirements of property and buildings to be up to code. And so we offer a service now within that if a small business needs advice, they can come and I can refer them to our 2 colleagues in the Small Business Ally service, and they can ask questions about that in a sort of private and confidential way to enable them to sort of get answers without feeling that they're being judged.
Great. Well, I mean, I think it's really valuable that you're so focused on demystifying this whole process, because I know that can definitely be a challenge at times. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Commissioner Ornelas-Wise.
Another thing that I was going to mention is I know that restaurants, especially a lot of small mom and pop shops, that were restaurants, had to close because they didn't really know how to pivot in regards to technology and takeout. And, I don't know if it would be nice to see a success story of someone that was able to pivot given the pandemic, that there's lessons learned and how that could be modeled for other businesses. And maybe that's how we could use students or other local organizations to really provide those type of workshops to allow them to have those type of services, to be able to successfully model someone that was able to pivot.
Yeah, it's the absolute number one topic at the moment. So many business owners realize that a number of their competitors did really well because they got online really quickly. And in the restaurant business, if you had a really good takeout online service, you were ahead of the game. So you're absolutely on point. It's one of our core questions. And within the business owner space, that's what we're trying to draw into the offer. I think the key point there around marketing is cultural and language sensitivity. If you'd asked me this question 18 months ago, I would have just given you my sort of standard British English answer. Now, when we do something, we're going to do it in 3 or 4 languages. And we're going to recognize that different people have different communication tools. And the truth is, we're going to make mistakes along the way. But I would like to feel, in representing this interest to you, it is that we learn from our mistakes, and therefore our ability to use organizations is based on who is here. And the Alum Rock position is a very important one by virtue of the fact that issues of cultural identity are so important there. That's why we want to build those organizations in that locality. And we have the same conversation in different parts of the city. It's not exclusive to Alum Rock, but I feel that the way we evaluate the pilot and then draw up a more citywide approach to challenging business displacement will give us confidence from that experience.
Yeah, because, it's not just language and cultural barriers. Sometimes, because of someone's age, they might not have either the access or the knowledge about the technology on how to be able to do that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the examples of the Latino Business Foundation, which I would circulate to commission members for interest, is they've just started their online offer, and they've just got 100 businesses. They were looking for 10. And 50 of the businesses are women owners. So now they've got a women entrepreneurs group. Now that didn't exist 6 months ago in Alum Rock. So suddenly things are beginning to emerge. So it is experimental. It does carry risk, but I think, Commissioner, your point is absolutely correct. And we have to look at all aspects of that offer. And that's really, if you said to me, where would we want to be in 2 years' time? It's kind of that last slide on the presentation. We should be seeing evidence of what we're trying to do against those bullet points.
Yeah, I mean, we are the Silicon Valley, so we are on cutting edge when it comes to technology. So we should help everyone, with that respect. Thank you. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Commissioner Oliverio.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you to OED for pivoting to assist small business during the pandemic. Question for City Attorney Vera. What I heard during this meeting was that the city cannot negotiate private contracts such as leases and rents. Is that correct?
I think that may be restating it a little bit too broadly. Obviously, if the city is involved in giving money or providing some benefit, some financial benefit, pardon me, to a particular project, that yes, it can. However, in general, there is a state law that prohibits, for example, rent control, prohibits us from legislating minimum terms of leases, basically negotiating leases. And I had the reference in front of me and I just lost it. And but we had this discussion with the flea market project, for example. But if we are putting money into the project, if it's receiving a benefit from the city, and I don't just mean a land use approval, I mean actual financial benefit, then yes, we can negotiate some of the terms under which that land will be used.
Great. So when it comes to a private development, let's say, a major street in San Jose, it's been planned in the general plan to have some intense development, and there's a variety of parcels that are being combined, maybe has a tenant in there, a commercial tenant. The city can't say, assuming no government funding, that, hey, when you reopen and you build this thing, we would like the rents to be a certain price, and the person that's there today in the space, we want them to be in your new space, and this is the rent we want them to pay.
No, we can do none of that. And I found the reference to the law. It's the Cortese-Keene Seymour Commercial Property Investment Act. It's in Civil Code Section 1954.25 et sequitur. And it's a very broad prohibition against local control or any attempt at local control over the private landlord-tenant, the commercial landlord-tenant relationship, unless we have money in the project.
Thank you. And then staying on the same scenario, where we have a place in the general plan that is, wants some intense development. Again, there's a variety of parcels. We may have a commercial tenant in the building. From what I understand, based on the presentation, assuming no government funding, that there is no ability for the city to say to the applicant who's proposing something, you must keep this person in the space, or you must provide them compensation on the space that they have to leave. Let's assume they're on a month-to-month lease, and so they're paying their rent by month to month. Does the city have the ability to say, Mr. and Mrs. Applicant, you have these tenants in there today, and we feel that you should give them X amount of money to do your project?
Generally, no, can't do that. Because usually the termination provisions have been negotiated in the agreement between the landlord and the tenant. And so when a particular project comes up, it would be interference with the contract between the two private parties.
So all in all, even though there may be good intentions from the government entity wanting to take care of a small business owner, that's a private matter, and the city has no ability to affect that either in future rents and leases or in paying a compensation that they will close because development as the city has planned is going to occur.
Right. Now, having said that, however, what I do want to say is that sometimes property owners, particularly if they are having, for example, need a statement of overriding considerations for CEQA, and we need to take a look at the benefits to the city, the benefits to the community in making that override, and we're asking council to do that. The applicant is asking council to do that. Sometimes applicants will voluntarily offer certain things in order to provide benefit to the community, and that does not necessarily mean that they could not offer to house all of their tenants, to relocate them temporarily and house them, to do something like that. It also doesn't preclude that occurring through a development agreement, because development agreements are not bound by the same rules. And so if we wanted to, in a development agreement, they were coming in for a large project and we negotiated that, they would retain the same tenants or whatever, that could occur there as well.
Got it. If it was a PD or just a development, actually that would be different. Plan development versus development agreement.
And the reason it's okay in a development agreement, as most of the Planning Commission knows, or at least the ones who have been here a little bit longer on the commission, is a development agreement is voluntarily negotiated between the developer and the city. It's not a unilateral police power, requirement, a condition of approval, and that's the difference.
And of course, development agreements are not as frequent as all the other land use issues that come before the city in these types of situations.
They're not.
Google
They're not.
and maybe a few others, et cetera. Okay.
Right.
Well, thank you very much, Vera. Thank you again for the presentation. I think as planning commissioners and council members, there's often where you see applicants come forward with commercial developments, again, that have been mixed use developments that have been laid out in the general plan is what the city wants it to be. And ultimately there are commercial tenants that are there. And as much as there is the hope and aspiration to assist them, the city is, unable by law to really interfere in those private contracts. And I think that is important as we, as ourselves, may be facing some of these in our tenure. So thank you very much.
Mr. Farley, really quickly, that's a broad question, but to what extent do the urban villages impact these small businesses? And is it viewed as a positive or a negative?
You have to look at each urban village proposal on its own merits. So on the east side of the city with 5 Wounds, for instance, you have a very close relationship, and I think there's likely to be a satisfactory conclusion. But as the previous commissioner was asking the question of our attorney, it's not a guarantee. And it really is about good faith and good behavior by all parties that leads to a satisfactory conclusion. And I think my observation of small business is that the more they're invited and the more time they have to consider, it's sort of basic points in my presentation, I think they're more likely to understand their options and how to negotiate if they're able to then take advice. I don't think there's a kind of one-size-fits-all model that you can just apply as a sort of list and say, if a business does this, they'll maximize their chances of relocation and survival. Or I think almost each of the urban village questions has to be treated on its own merits.
Great. Thank you. I don't see any further questions. Commissioner Control? Or
Actually, I did have a question. Actually, I hadn't raised my hand, but
oh, I'm sorry.
Is it that the city is unable to legally affect protection for commercial tenants, or is it unwilling to enter into that dialogue?
Well, I would defer to the attorney's sort of earlier answer there.
Yeah, we are prohibited by state law from doing rent control, doing anything having to do with commercial tenancies at all, whether it's a month-to-month rental or whether it's a longer-term lease, unless we give money to the project, unless there is government assistance to that project by the city.
So tax credits definitely impact that.
Well, they're not local tax credits though.
A good example, Commissioner, would be where the county or the city housing office is financially supporting a project. Right. And that's when the expectation of the city is that there are good standards applied, both in terms of negotiation and outcome. And I think that's where, you know, if I were to represent the interests of small business here, it's the point I made earlier. It's the business owner understanding that situation and what options are in front of them, and not feeling as though they're having to make that decision within 10 minutes of knowing, but actually they do have a respectable amount of time to understand. And that's where the city, I think, expects to see good behavior from developer landowner, where the city is or the county is putting money directly into a project like that. But as you know, affordable housing is an incredibly complex area of public policy at the moment.
Right.
The city basically has to have some power of the purse strings in this project, not just regular land use approvals that anybody could come in for. And that's the difference. If it does not have any money in the game, then we are prohibited from controlling rents and from interfering in that landlord-tenant relationship and whatever agreement they come to for the tenancy.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Montanez, my apologies for skipping over you. Commissioner Montanez? We lost her. I think she's having some issues with her microphone.
Hi, Vice Chair. We also have a public raised hand. Do we want to wait for Commissioner Martinez to come back, or do we want to go ahead and start with attendee raised hands?
If Commissioner Montanez, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and take your question and then go to the public question, if that's okay.
Sorry about that, guys. Like, my internet's not doing well right now. But anyways, I'm more interested in the study and figuring out. There's a couple of questions I have. I want to know how the OED is cross-pollinating your findings with planning and building development to ensure that along these processes, the small businesses that may own their properties or that could influence, you know, some of the maybe opportunities that exist on their site. How are you cross-pollinating to ensure that the results that you have from this study, especially those the things that have to do with like the language barriers, the culture barriers, how are we cross-pollinating this into other departments?
Thank you for the question. I think the short answer is we now geocode onto maps all 62,000 businesses. So I know exactly where they all are on a map in the city. We didn't have that 2 years ago. So that enables me to see, if you were to say this site is coming up for development, I would now know. So when we had Google, for instance, and we had all those sites coming forward as a plan, I was able to produce a map for the public that identified the total number of businesses on those sites, broken down in the format that I presented to you. So we have that opportunity to map and see. I think the difficult part of the answer, and I don't have a great answer for you, is essentially how we connect the businesses that are impacted by development with the services. And that's where Office of Economic Development with the planning department and the housing department have to functionally come together to understand what's happening, and we have to work together. And that's why, in a sense, part of the role of the signpost and the catalyst within the Office of Economic Development is in fact internal coordination within the city to engage with the planners to understand the development process, to be able to inform the business owner what is happening and when it's happening. So, and if I'm not able to answer that question, it's my ability then to refer them to someone who can. And in terms of different languages, that's where it becomes complex, because I look for colleagues who can communicate in different languages or can advise in a different language in order to be able to satisfy whatever questions the business owner may have about a particular development. But it's not as straightforward. I'd love it to be more straightforward than it is.
How are you able to codify some of this, like the language, into the work that you're doing so that there is, you know, when there is, let's say, for instance, notices or meetings or these types of surveys that are being done, have you had that codified anywhere in your processes or workflows that, you know, you will reach out in at least, you know, in addition to English, maybe Vietnamese and Spanish? Is that anywhere in the policies or in your workflows?
Yes, and our current approach within the Office of Economic Development is every time we issue an email or an e-blast, we do so translated into 4 languages. So English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and modern Chinese. That is our standard.
And then is that also reflected in the staffing that you have, and in these allies that you have for the small businesses, specifically, you know, in communities of color that have responded to your surveys?
I think we're fortunate with our small business allies. One speaks perfect Spanish, and the other one speaks perfect Vietnamese. So we're very fortunate in that respect. And there are colleagues within the Office of Economic Development and more broadly within the City Manager's Office that we do draw on from time to time to be effective. But we are a small team, so it is a challenge. But that's how we're progressing. If you'd asked me that question 2 years ago, we wouldn't be communicating in 4 languages in the way we are. That's what we've learned. That's what we've adapted. That's what we do now. And I have to say, we're reaching a bigger audience, and we're being more effective in the way we do that.
I appreciate that, Vic, and I think that's going to be important when when the PBID comes up. It really is, because I think that's going to be a huge opportunity for engagement across the board. So thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jennifer, do we want to go to the attendee question?
Yes. 1 second. Okay, Paul. Go ahead and unmute your device and begin to speak. You have 2 minutes for your comment.
Thank you. My name is Paul Soto. I'm a lifelong resident, 6th generation Sahonero. And I'd like to know, we need a working definition of equity. I have been on the council constantly, because this is a legal term. You see, and if we're going to start talking about that from the dais, and you know, all these flowery subjective definitions of what equity means, and I'm glad Nora's on the call because she's heard this conversation from me, and I'm going to keep on her until we get a working objective definition of what equity means. You see, because one of the reasons, my opinion as to why it's not, is because then we have an objective measure that the city has to follow. And if they don't, I got them, because there's people like me that are paying extremely close attention to everything that's going on in the city, absolutely everything. And I miss nothing. And so we really need this. What I'd like to know is from your office, what have you done personally to ensure that equity is applied? And what is your definition? Number one. Number two, language is an absolute necessity, because in the schools in this city, they used to beat kids. My parents were some of them, abused them and dehumanized them for speaking Spanish. So you're not like affording us something by being kind to translate it. This is expected because of what has happened in this city. You're English, so you don't understand this. I'm Chicano. It's in my history. I don't speak Spanish right now as a result of it. So you're not doing us any favors by making these translations. This is an absolute necessity, and we expect it as citizens.
Well, Mr. Farley, I'm not sure how one would formulate a response, or if you're necessarily obligated to respond, or Vera. I see Commissioner Oliverio may have something.
No, it's a public comment. That's all. You know, if one of the commissioners wants to ask a question, but it's just a public comment.
Okay. At this point, it seems we're kind of up against it. I'd like to thank Mr. Farley for his very informative presentation. I appreciate all the commissioners' questions as well. And Jennifer, at this point, do we adjourn, or are there additional items?
We can adjourn. There's no additional items.
Okay. Again, I'd like to thank Mr. Farley. Very informative. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Pleasure.
That's it. That's a wrap, folks.
Thank you, Vic.